it's less than a third of a PlayStation Pro. So when someone,
Well, when you put
when
it
someone
that
dishes
way.
out the Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel, where a podcast about video games, anime, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything in between. I'm your host today, as always, Joe, and with me, the gentleman who has his truck all decked out for the wonderful Mexican Heritage Month, Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Doing good. Yeah, I have a lot of Mexican heritage. And it's on my truck now too. Um, luchador masks. I've been driving around town just throwing luchador masks at people walking to banks with luchador mask on. They don't like that very much. Saying
So long as
Arriba.
you have the filter in front, then you're okay. If you have the filter, they're like,
Yeah,
okay, we'll let.
yeah. I wear a N95 mask over, and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Um, I say Arriba a lot, and yeah. So Mexican Heritage Month, kind of weird. You'd think that you would just make it like October because like Dia de los Muertos is technically at or you'd make it November, but then I guess we already have like Native. That's kind of like Native American month, or is that later? I don't
Well,
know.
it's the only month. It's the only one that I'm aware of that does, that starts in half a month. It starts on the 15th of September, goes to October 15th, and I'm like, you know what? That's wild because it's technically 2 months. It's not just a month. It's just, not 30. Yes, whatever.
It's not a month.
But
It's just
here
30
in
days, I guess.
and so here in Chicagoland, I've never seen it so much until I moved here. But they kind of take it up a notch, and we're talking, so how you see a lot of you know, a lot of Trumpers and stuff like that, or like the red, like you'd see them carrying like American flags, or like down south, like Georgia, you'd have, the Confederate flag flying like on a actual pole strapped to a truck,
Yeah.
multiple poles. So they'll do stuff like that with, the Mexican flag, or they'll do like a hybrid flag, between like half Mexican, half American. I'm like, all right. But then they do like hood wraps and the little tiny flags you have from the like you hang from like the windows when you roll them up. Just everyone's all decked out for just that, but just this 1 month, and then they just disappear. And I'm like, you know what? That's fine. Like that's awesome that except for the other day I saw one that was a huge flag to the point where as it was wafting in the wind, the lane next to him, it was covering his driver's side vision, and I'm like, oh man, that's a dick move. That is just
It's
something
not
else.
safe, dude. You gotta be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
And then if they get pulled over, you can claim the officer to be racist,
I
and
don't
so therefore
know.
you
I
win.
mean, like, in Texas, like every month is Mexican Heritage Month. Um. In some ways.
I mean,
Uh.
what, half the population's Mexican, the other half is Republican, right? So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
starting to blend those together. No, yeah. I hadn't even known that was the thing. I did hear about one coming up, but I forget which one it was. But yeah, thanks for making me aware of my own heritage.
I was gonna say, wasn't September 15th like actual like the actual holiday? Like so
Well,
that makes sense why they start.
Wednesday was Cheat Burger Day, and we were having burgers. I didn't know that was its own day. I was like, okay, I understand cheeseburger, like National Cheeseburger Day, but there's like a National Cheat Cheeseburger Day.
Okay,
I could be confused. Maybe it was National
well,
Cheeseburger Day. No, I was
you
no, I was
technically
like, are you
you
sure
can make anything.
Cheat
Yeah,
Burger? And they were like, yep. And I was like, oh, maybe I just heard it wrong. It probably was cheeseburger, but I think cheeseburger's funnier. Anyway,
You're probably right, but yeah, I mean, it's just like for around this, like I said, around here, it's you'll see a bunch of Reddit posts about people visiting, being like, "What's up with this?" And because it's just kind of wild. Uh, but once again, like I said, I don't think it's obnoxious. Like just occasionally you get the one or two people, but like I said, no more than I've seen with people with you know the rest of the year, just all year round having just obnoxious flags of their own version of "Don't tread on me" and stuff like that, and it's just like you don't understand the whole point of that. But yeah, so it's most definitely a time, but I am most definitely ready for October already because I'm like this heat has been nuts here and nowhere near as bad as down south. Granted,
what is
but
it up there? Like
I
83 degrees?
I think last week's yeah it's been in upper 80s and I'm like yeah well you know
I'm sorry.
but
Uh,
it's okay we
it's
have
fine.
AC for a reason. Um, Granted, I have shovel snow, so
So
that's my offset. I'm like
yeah, I mean, it's almost like we almost don't even need heat like heating down here. We need AC. We don't really need heating. I know I've listened to podcasts from British people where they talk about how they like literally do not have AC in Britain, and most of the time, like literally like 11 months out of the year, there it's fine. But then there's like they always talk about how 1 month out of the year they're just freaking dying. And I'm just like, that is crazy to just not have AC. I mean, I guess it doesn't ever get really hot there, but that's just mind blowing to me. If it was just from a sleep standpoint, if it's above 75 outside, it's not easy to sleep. I don't know. It's whatever.
yeah. I mean, I always joked about with the in Asia about the whole like you sleeping with a fan on you and you'll get you sick and stuff like that, or the fan death thing in Korea. And I'm like no, that's a lie. That is 100% a lie. I have during the Japanese summers, the fan is stationary. It stays blowing directly overnight
Yeah.
because it is too dang hot
So
in here.
hot. Yeah.
Like I've never gotten sick from a stupid fan blowing. That's just all. I'm pretty sure that's just government propaganda turned into a folklore. And so
If I
it was,
if I have a fan blowing or like air, it's more air conditioning, but fan is also part of it. If I have like air blowing up my nose or like into my mouth, then like all night, then that can be a problem. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna kill you. But anyway,
I hope you don't get a CPAP then, because that's exactly what those things do.
yeah, I don't think I have
Uh,
I don't have my bench press isn't good enough to need a CPAP machine.
all right, so we have here. What do we got for news, buddy?
Well, Nintendo's dragging themselves around too long. Anyway, so basically, Switch 2 image leak has happened. There was a Reddit post where I don't know if they were really the source or if they were getting it from somebody that was a source, but basically there are photos online that you are able to see of the Switch 2's controllers that they're gonna be magnet anyway. So the Switch 2 controllers, the body kind of exploded, and the motherboard, and then there are computer generated images of the body and Joy Cons, kind of all connected, and then there are also spec leaks as far as what hardware is going to be in there. So yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. It looks very similar to the original Switch, which I think is a very, very, very good move on their part. I think they know that. I mean, I guess we've probably could have said, in 2018, 2019, the Switch 2 is going to look a lot like the Switch 1, because it's just a really good design. And after, I guess they learned their lesson with the Wii U, where it's like we had the Wii and then we screwed up by making it weird with the Wii U. So we have the Switch. We're not going to screw it up by making it like we're not going to do the Wii U again, kind of thing. But basically, it looks very similar. There are SL and SR buttons, it would seem, so you have your L button and R button, and then on Nintendo, instead of R2 and L2. It's ZL and ZR. Well, beneath that and kind of behind it, um, is going to be, I think I'm remembering this properly, is going to be like an SL and an SR button. So they are adding that in, which doesn't seem like a terrible idea to me. Like if you look at where it's placed, it's like, okay, that makes sense to be an extra kind of thing that you could use if you wanted to, but wouldn't have to as a developer. And also, it wouldn't necessarily be in your way when you're playing a game. Um, but it is a little bit like I'm a little bit dubious about it. I have to get it in my hands before I would be able to tell you this is definitely a good idea or not, because it seems like it could be, but maybe not. That was one of the things that stuck out to me. The other two things are um, hard drive. The onboard hard drive space is going to be like 232 gigs or 200 and something gigs, 64 maybe, whatever, as opposed to the 32 gigs that was on the original Switch. So 264 or whatever gigs of hard drive space is kind of nothing. But it's about as much nothing as 32. I think, well, it might even be a little more comparatively than 32 was in 2017, because that was like laughably small back then. So the game should be bigger. So 264 or whatever gigs will probably go about as far. And then the other thing was 12 gigabytes of RAM as opposed to the 4 that were on the original Switch. So that's 3 times as much. Kind of all stuff that we probably could have guessed at. Oh, an 8-inch screen as opposed to a 7-inch screen, which I'm very surprised by. I really thought they would have gone with the 7-inch screen and then revealed, like you've always said, you release the regular version and then you release a deluxe later and make money off of all the fanboys and all the latecomers.
Well, I mean, it's just an 8-inch screen. I mean, it's an LCD still, to the best of our knowledge right now, and that's when they come out with the OLED later. Yeah, I mean, they
Well,
can
they
still
definitely
do
have. I
that.
mean, they're
At
going to
least,
hold that in the bag. Yeah, right.
I mean, I feel that it's the right move to make a bigger base screen model, just because that way all the games will be, theoretically set for it, but also it physically looks, if everything looks really similar, you have to have something that makes it stand out compared to the original, so you don't get that that brand confusion, much like the Wii and Wii U, um, just naming scheme. So with this one, if it's bigger by physically bigger, then at least you can anyone who grabs it and be like, yeah, this feels better, this looks better because it's just bigger. I mean, that does make sense. I think the joke has always been, not especially now with these mock-ups, like, dude, it is literally just a super switch. They should just go with that,
I mean,
instead
I,
of.
I think that would be a good name for it. That would be a nice callback to the old days. Um, I don't want. I mean, they probably won't because it's too close to PlayStation. But part of me is just like, just call it the Switch 2. I mean, especially if you're going to make especially, I think if they call it the Switch 2, we will have a pretty good idea that they're going this route the for this generation, obviously, and also the next generation, and they'll have a Switch 3 and possibly even a Switch 4, depending on how things change. But so yeah, like saying Super Switch. I don't know how I feel about saying that over and over again, but but uh, but that would probably mean that they're not necessarily planning on continuing it forever. Um, to me, but I don't know. To me, I'm just like, just call it the Switch 2. That's
I mean,
that's what I
but
prefer.
with all the bad Nintendo naming schemes, if it's the Super Switch, you can then call it the SS for short.
Yeah, and then they have particular
Just
then they
just
have
just like PlayStation having the PSSR. It's just
yeah, and then like
w-
if you're like and then if you're like in like a Nintendo if you're like an officer at Nintendo and then like you're like an SS officer, right?
yep. Exactly. So, I mean, we know how Japan swings. So, all right.
A little bit of Axis, a little Axis joke there for you. Um, yeah. So, I mean, I'm I'm not discouraged by any of this for sure. I haven't really thought about it too much. I'm kind of encouraged. I just think that I just think that it's stupid that Nintendo has played around with this for so long. That is to say that they just haven't freaking talked about it. And I mean, and then again, part of me is like, well, no matter when they wanted to release it, these pictures were going to come out before they did. It's just got to go into too many hands for too many days or weeks prior to, no matter when they release or no matter when they talk about it, that it's going to get leaked to some degree. Um, I just I don't know, and then again, it might just be all fake or whatever. But it does look like the other thing is that the Joy Cons look like they are magnetized rather than. I haven't even taken out my Joy Cons in so long, like slotted or whatever. So that's interesting. I don't know how well that's going to work. Oh, there's a USB C on the bottom, like it used to be, but also on the top, and people are speculating that the bottom one is for docking, and the top one is just better for charging or doing something else with or whatever. Because like I don't know how much you've actually played with your Switch off the dock, but if you're playing with it and then oh my battery's running low, but I don't want to stop playing, I'll charge it, and it's like sitting on your lap, and you've got that cord, kind of like because every cord has like a shell at the connection point, so it's kind of a point that's sticking out, and it's like you're kind of working with the cord around, and you're like, this is just kind of annoying, you know. So it makes sense to have it at the top where it's not as much in your way. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But maybe they can do something else with it too. I don't know. But yeah. So that is kind of the long and short of it. We are kind of getting doled out information slowly but surely. Everyone's saying it's right around the corner. It's right around the corner. So let's hope that it is around the corner. And
Yeah, I
should
mean the magnet Joy Cons is mostly in response to Joy-Con drift. The Hall effect,
oh,
Joy-Con,
how does that
aftermarket stuff you can
fix?
do.
How does that fix
Uh,
the drift?
because it prevents plastic from grinding on each other because it's
Oh, interesting.
that's how. So by keeping it magnet, it's stabilized in the center, opposed to eventually wear and tear over time. And that's exactly what happens with most physical controllers. PlayStation, Xbox, stuff like that. Those controllers have had those functions in the past. So that's the importance of the magnet. People are doing aftermarket mods for Joy Cons to get parts and stuff like that to do stuff similar things. So they're getting ahead of it by making a better Joy-Con this time around. This last time around, they just told you to just eat it, and hopefully you wouldn't go through the hassle of the RMA process. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Nintendo people expect a lot more out of Nintendo than they should. Um, I don't feel like I count myself among those people. I don't really like. I I feel like hardware is going to be bad, or not necessarily bad, but like barely adequate. Graphics can be barely adequate, but the actual gameplay is where I criticize them if it's not really good. You know, well, I think that's probably fair. Whereas with Sony, PlayStation, or other developers or whatever, I kind of do things differently. But
yeah, it's
yeah,
weird that you do that, but no, with the for me, it's my problem was I had Joy-Con drift and I barely use my system ever, and so it's like that's ridiculous for me, someone who barely uses it, to suffer that. And I'm like, I understand if you played a lot, wear and tear over time. I mean, my 360, some of my old 360 controllers have that, but I mean that's to be expected. Once again, I had played
yeah,
with those for over a generation plus of and then I've even used some of my controllers on the PC and stuff. While the Joy Cons were barely touched within like not even a year, or maybe like 2 years at most, and I already got drift, and I'm like, dude, I don't play this ever. And in fact, I mostly use a third party dongle adapter, so I can use different controllers. So the fact that I have drift is like there's no excuse for it. And that's the thing is, Nintendo. People expect better from Nintendo because Nintendo generally has higher quality, things as a whole. Um, and when they used to do processes like fixing or repairing, when they reissued better straps for the Wii. When they ended up giving they did the Wii Move, what was it Wii Move Plus or whatever, the little extra adapter on the Wii Move controllers. They were able, they gave out free. You can ask for the new silicone, covers for to fix with the actual extension at the back end.
Mm,
So they were always willing to do customer first, and then this one it always felt like half-assed. So then that's between some of the chintzy in concepts and designs. Like you said, it just wasn't well thought out to have a handheld. Like you can't rest the handheld on your, like on you or on your chest, or like people who play laying down. You
yeah.
can't do that while charging. For me, my workaround was I ended up getting I had to buy a third party stand that had a special hole in the middle. It's a folding, unfolding stand that's like thin, and then you just pop it up, and that's how I use um, my Switch one on an airplane, because
Mm,
that way I can still have the cable charging, still have it stationary. Because yeah, you can't use the kickstand and you can't charge it at the same time. That was
yeah.
those kind of simple flaws should never have made it like beyond like first revision.
Yeah.
It's like so that was the big. I mean, but granted, hey, it sold. There's a pandemic. They sold gangbusters as before and during, and and continuing. So, screw the customer. They win in the end. So
Yeah. I
that's
mean, I just
I'm
think
a little
about it
bitter,
like,
obviously.
I mean, like I heard a long time ago, you know, Nintendo is a toy company that makes games. When I heard that, I was like, yeah, that actually kind of explains a lot about the mentality. Um, like I just never think of the Joy-Con drift because I've always used the Pro controller, which has never given me problems. So like that's not really been like in my mind. But you're right. Like that's something that's not really acceptable. I'm talking about like design wise, oh this or that or the level of like plastic quality or whatever. But yeah, like the Joy-Con drift is a bridge too far. Which I guess they've have different ways of you getting your making that right, which a lot of people don't do because I mean they shouldn't have to go out of their way to do that. Um, but yeah, it's I fully expect more. I fully expect the Switch 2 to be similar to that. Um, I'm hoping that there's nothing as big of a deal as Joy-Con drift. Um, I really do hope that this is just an iteration of the Switch, and it's like, okay, the the graphics are better, the hard drive space is bigger, the screen is bigger, and everything else works better, but it's not like a leap forward in technology. I just want like games that play well with a little bit better graphics and hardware that does not give me any trouble. That's really all that I want, and everything else can kind of be the same. But yeah, it remains to be seen. I don't know. It's starting to look. I don't know. It's like it looks a lot like a Steam Deck to me in some ways, but that's just from the graphical, from like the computer generated pictures I've seen. So
There's a reason for that because the Steam Deck was made to look like the Switch. Have the concept and the form factor, and is meant to be the Switch but better and more powerful as far as better goes. And that's yeah, there's legit reason why everyone's following that same portable slash convertible form factor, going from handheld to screen design. And
Yeah.
I think it's okay that they make the same, iterative bump, kinda like the DS line of thinking, because that's how they always did their handhelds, uh, and, it's one of those things, though, that it's like, well, the only downfall, or the only, not downfall, drawback, I guess, is the Nintendo's not doing an actual innovation other than just the way the games are. But that was always the unique thing about new Nintendo products. For the most part, it was like, hey, we're coming out with a new MacGuffin, that like a real new thing, like whether it be the DS, going to DS to 3DS, because, or just like going from the Game Boy Advance to the DS, like you have a touchscreen now. Now you have 3D in it. The the Wii was the motion controls. The Wii U, at least, even though it tanked, but it was. I think there was a lot more to that too. But it's like, yeah, the whole tablet design, essentially the Switch in your hand, but it just
Yeah.
wasn't powerful enough to do any of that separate. If it was a truly mobile, then that's kind of, n Sony didn't get it right either, but they're they're selling pretty well, those, um, the PlayStation, screen handheld controller things.
Are
I
those
can't remember
selling
what it's
well?
called now.
Have you heard that they're still
Yeah,
selling well?
people seem to be really happy with them. I mean, according to Digital Foundry, they absolutely hate it, but it seems to be doing pretty well, and
Who
everyone
is
I've, like,
who is buying this and how are they? I want to meet somebody that has bought this and used it. And I guess there's probably YouTube videos, but I want to meet a real
well,
person
a
who's
lot of
like, yeah. Anyway,
it seems that the big popular thing is like, "Hey, I got one," like, we got the one nice TV, we got the PlayStation hooked up to that TV, but sometimes,
mom and dad are
significant other
watching
wants to
Netflix.
watch,
Yeah.
yeah, like, they wanna watch something, so I'm just gonna play, or like, "Hey, I wanna take this, and now I'm gonna lie down in bed," I'm still within the house, so I'm gonna go ahead and, play it that way, and I'm like, that makes sense to a certain point, but, uh yeah, it's just, it's one of the things. It's not for me. Uh, my kids
I
would most definitely break that thing. So, yeah.
I just
But
want to
that's
meet a person who does that. I do.
I mean, I'm surprised you don't actually own one, because you're kind of the target demographic of someone who has disposable income, no children, and being like, yeah, it's like, why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, but
Not
like
so much.
I want good thing. I don't. I mean, I have disposable income, but I would rather spend that money on another anime figure. Like that's more useful to me. Uh, I want to spend that money on like games that like brand new games that are coming out, or on a, or like on another controller for each of my systems, or a new. I mean, $200 would buy me a pretty good little like a pretty good monitor. It would. There's a lot of different things I can get a lot more use out of than that. I mean, it's like 2/3 of a payment on my truck. There's a lot of anyway.
Yeah,
I'm just
but put
pooping
it
on
this
it
way,
now.
it's less than a third of a PlayStation Pro. So
Well, when you put
when
it
someone
that
dishes
way,
out the
hey, if you can use
so
that shield on a PlayStation Pro, which I guess you'll be able to. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know if that would be. I don't know. At least you'd be able to keep using it. I guess. I don't know. I don't want to talk about that anymore. That's neither here nor there. I just would like to meet somebody that actually is using it and talk to them in real life. Maybe shake them a little bit. Um, anyway, so yeah, we the wait continues. The wait continues on the
alright, so what
Switch
else
2.
is Nintendo doing to the world?
So remember that little game that came out back? Was it the spring? Uh, called Palworld, and everyone was like, "This game's amazing." Wait a second, it's not just making fun of Pokemon; it's kind of plagiarizing Pokemon. Uh, and everyone was like, "Well, you can tell that this one and this one are combined or whatever, and that they're just sort of changed up a little bit." Um, and Nintendo didn't say anything really, right? They just said that they will protect. That was all they said was we will protect our copyrighted material or something,
Yeah, something along those lines, yeah.
and then they didn't say anything else. Well, now they have announced that they're going to sue the makers of Power World I can't remember the developer's name. I just read it a minute ago, but anyway, they're going to sue him, and Palworld says that they are going to fight the lawsuit. Um, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know everything about this, but from what I heard and saw those months ago, it looked to me like Nintendo would have a pretty decent case. Some people were like crying foul, like, this is crazy. This is insanely, like, this is exactly like copied and stuff like that. It's like some of the things that people were saying were copyright infringement. I'm like, yeah, that's not it. I can see why you would think that on some of those, but it wasn't. It's like, yeah, I mean, they probably are a little bit, but you can't prove that. On some of them though,
Well,
it did look
the only thing I
very,
remember is they talked
very.
about possibly being AI generated based off of some of those,
That could be it
and
too.
then
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
I don't
like,
know how true that was, but I remember people saying like, "Well, if you're gonna say, hey, I want an AI generated different version of this thing, yeah, that I can see you getting in trouble for."
yeah. I mean, I don't want to jump off on that too much, but I kind of, in some ways, I kind of hope it is like due to AI generation stuff, because I sort of want to go ahead and have all of these AI generated arguments and lawsuits right now, rather than over the course of 30 years, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit this, a little bit that. I just want to get it decided what we do and don't want from AI in our creative world. But anyway, like it looks like Palworld is going to defend themselves. Um, I, I mean, it's been months. I presume that Nintendo's lawyers have had a good, long, hard look at Palworld and have done the due diligence. And I mean, as a bit of a gambling man, I would put my money on Nintendo to win this going away. If they're going to go to war, they're going to come with everything that they have. And we've seen what they do to people who cross the line on YouTube and like just show gameplay. And we've seen what they do to people who, who make emulators and stuff like that. And I feel like this falls somewhere probably in between that, if not maybe a little bit more on the emulator side. And I think that the people of Palworld are going to be paying Nintendo money for a long time.
Well, see, here's the big thing then, because the developers, Pocket Pair,
Thank you.
um, they're partnered with Sony now. So will Sony help back them to help protect their potential new franchise?
I don't think
Or
so.
will they do like the No Man's Sky thing, promote
Yep.
them in the beginning and be like, the moment something happens, they're just gonna drop them like a sack of
Dude,
potatoes.
they're going to cut them loose. They're going to cut them loose so fast. Like once, like I just think that I just have faith in Nintendo's lawyers. I have faith that Nintendo's lawyers, especially since it's been literally like what I mean, 5 months or so. That's a
It came out in January.
Oh wow, it's been 9 months. Okay, yeah, they've taken a lot of time and they've looked this up and down, is my guess. And I think they are fully ready to completely destroy Pocket Pair. Sony, I imagine, will put up a little bit of a fight and then go, or they'll go the Sony overlords will go to the Pocket Pair and be like, "Hey, did you guys? What do they have on you?" And Pocket Pair's gonna be like, "They kind of have this and this," and then Sony's gonna be like, "Whoa, oh, you're on your own," and they're just gonna cut them off. I mean, either that or they're gonna pay Nintendo to go away, which that would probably be the best possible outcome for Pocket Pair is if Sony ponies up enough money that Nintendo's like, well, we don't want to fight this behemoth, which is what Sony is, and tied up in court for 5 years for a little bit more money than Sony is going to give us right now. Um, that would probably be the best outcome. But regardless, I don't think Palworld is going to get to, or Pocket Pair is going to get to do this again. I don't think there's going to be a Palworld 2. Or if there is, it's going to be like all new characters and stuff. But yeah, anyway, that's a lot of just kind of me. I don't want to say editorializing, but kind of guessing at the tea leaves here. But I think it's fun to talk about. So yeah, you know.
Yeah, good luck to them. We'll, most definitely see how this pans out because it'll be interesting. Grab the popcorn, guys. All right, what else you got for us?
Um, Two more things. First thing is that smaller stuff. Netflix popped out some new animated TV show trailers. Uh, some of these were announced like almost a year ago, but they have Devil May Cry, Splinter Cell, Tomb Raider, and Cyberpunk. The new Cyberpunk thing is probably going to be the most interesting, considering what Edge Runners was. But ironically, that one I didn't actually see a full trailer for at all. It was just like a kind of an announcement. So maybe it's online, and I just missed being able to see it or something. But that will probably be the most interesting. These others, I don't know if you got a chance to see the trailers for them, but Devil May Cry looks all right. Doesn't look amazing, but it looks pretty good. The action looks good. It depends on how much they spread it out. And it looks the most anime of them, I guess. Splinter Cell and Tomb Raider look a lot more American, which makes sense. Splinter Cell didn't really see a whole lot from that. Mostly just, hey, it exists, and here's a little bit of what it looks like and sounds like, but not really much of them trying to get your money. You know what I'm saying? Tomb Raider, the trailer had a lot in it. It showed a lot of what they were doing, a lot of the action, um, a lot of what was going on there. Looks very American. Um, and I told this to you before the podcast. It looks like a lot of a lot of it looks very flashy, but it looks light on the fundamentals of animation, which is to say, frame rates look pretty low, um, and things look like they're popped out from the screen. Sometimes they don't really look like they're part of the world. The background kind of separates too much. Um, and some kind of things like that where I was like, I don't know. But anyway, it was interesting that they popped out with all these trailers, and so I wanted to mention it.
Yeah, I didn't see the Splinter Cell one, but the Tomb Raider, yeah, it has that the American anime style where it's like Voltron or like what the Korra, the last, like Korra the Avatar series, like stuff. So it's kind of that kind of quality. As far as the frame pacing you mentioned, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. I did know that the trailer just did a lot of jump cuts and
Mm,
tried, you know, seeming more action heavy than it was, throwing in just a lot there, and it was kind of noisy. It didn't really give you a real purpose of what the series or the season's going to be about. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not really that interested. It didn't really grab me. Uh, in fact, the Devil May Cry one actually kind of turned me off. I was
mm,
just like, I was just like, yeah, it actually, it didn't look right to me. Something about it. It also, I mean, this animation style could also be considered equivalent to something like the Castlevania as well, which Netflix hit it out of the park with that, and I feel like they're just continually trying to do that again. Um, I did like Edge Runner, the Cyberpunk, the first Cyberpunk thing. I don't know anything about the new one coming out, and having just watched the Terminator Zero, I mean, Netflix is coming out with decent enough anime shows, and they have an okay track record. But at the same time, the cynic in me is like, okay, watching all this animation at some point, I'm like, all right, so when does the CG come in? I mean, I'm
Yeah,
expecting, I mean, like because that was the kind of the Ninja Kamui thing where it was like it looked really awesome the first episode, 2 episodes, and then all of a sudden, now we're gonna have robots or machines and like just really garbage CG and just jarring. So long as there's no like heavily like obvious CG crap, I'll be at least happy with that. And I think they can get away with doing a decent story. I mean, they aren't necessarily afraid to do more mature storylines, so it's not like it's going to be PG 13. They can make it more violent. Uh, it's Devil May Cry, like I mentioned before, I played the first 2 Devil May Cry games, and I actually really love them for the fact that they're, like, the best kind of B-tier cheesy action movie, like, you can't get much more like, you know what you're doing, and you're really it's almost, cringy because you're trying to make something overtly cheesy, you're kinda succeeding, but also you're kinda failing, and which makes it doubly cringe. Uh, I mean, like, the very first one, Dante, it's like the whole opening cinematic is just over the top and stupid, but
mm,
great. The story gets quote unquote epic in the grand scheme of things to the final boss battle, and it's just yeah, I mean, they kinda lost me by the time Devil May Cry 3 came out just because I I'm not good at the stylish action games. I mean, I can button mash my way to success,
yeah,
but I wasn't able to really hit those like the combos, and because they grade you on the combos and stuff like that, I've I'm like I know I'm failing. You're reminding me every time that I'm failing, and I'm not at that time in my life. I'm like I'm not going to spend the time to learn how to be really good at this, but I will watch someone on YouTube be amazing at it.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I
so
mean,
that's
like,
kind of it.
yeah, I think Devil May Cry is pretty cool. Not that I really know much about the lore, but like the look of it, the name, you know, the and just the lore fits in with a we can string a story in between action scenes here and kind of create a fun thing to watch. So I think that's it's not a bad place. It's not a bad uh, idea to draw from. Really, I think all of these like Devil May Cry, Splinter Cell, Tomb Raider, and of course Cyberpunk are all like, hey, we could make a good show out of this, a good side world show. Tomb Raider, in some ways, I'm surprised that they haven't already done it. Um, I would have preferred it to be given to like a true anime studio. Um, I honestly don't know what studio is doing this, but I feel like it's probably an American studio. I think that Tomb Raider would have been good to give like to a true anime studio and see sort of what they can do with it. Um, but yeah, these it's interesting that they're doing this much, but I don't really have much faith in Netflix animation. If Netflix is going to have animation that they're going to say is theirs, I prefer that they commission it from a studio that is really good at doing anime, like or animation just in general, like um like an A1 um in Japan, or I'm trying to think of who the biggest freaking one that does Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen. Anyway, can't think of it.
So real quick, I just looked it up. The people who are doing Tomb Raider is Powerhouse Animation Studios, and they're based out of Austin, Texas, and they're the ones who are credited with Castlevania, the first and the second season. They did Skull Island, Masters of the Universe, and that Blood. the Blood of Zeus, that Greek tournament anime. Or
Mm,
no, Blood of Zeus was different. That was a uh, kind of the one of the simple stories of, hey, Zeus has a bastard child and is going to fight the odds and raise up the ranks kind of thing. It
mm,
was I saw the first handful of episodes of that one, and that one was solid. Also, um they did another one, Seis Manos, which I didn't actually see either. So I mean, but they are competent, and I have no idea about Skull Island. I would never watch that,
I
but
mean,
the
like it looked like it has like they're going places and doing things in the show. It looked flashy in that way. It's just, and until it comes out, it's going to be hard to tell, for real how good it is, obviously. But just from what I saw, I was like, this looks a little bit light on the fundamentals. But yeah, that's a competent studio. I still would have preferred like a Japanese studio.
they are newer, newish as far as the animation that we are familiar with.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, but
yay,
I mean,
yay
yeah,
home
support your
team.
guys down in Texas, man.
I know, like yay home team, but like also it's like you gotta freaking do a good job. I I already root for the Cowboys, and that's sad enough. I can't be rooting for crappy anime studios too. Um, Not that they're crappy, but just like if it is, then I gotta call it like it is, bro. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of a little pack that came out there. I thought I'd mention.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's I remember years ago now, it's surprising it's been years now, but we had talked about how they were supposed to be closing down their animation studio, and then that was apparently incorrect at the time. Uh,
Well, oh, you mean then in Austin or
no,
Netflix?
just Netflix, because Netflix
Well,
was
I,
supposed to be winding down their animation, and it seems like,
well,
they've
I think that's
done the
probably
opposite.
true. I mean, it was never that they were. It was never. Hey, we're cutting all of our animation. It was we're cutting back on animation. So I think this is it. There would probably be, if that hadn't happened, what do we'd probably see like 6 shows at this point, or 8 shows or something like that. I don't know, but I do think that they probably that both are true. That hey, this is it. It did cut back, and we're always going to do this. So, but still
Alright.
a lot.
Alright, what's the last bit of news you got for us this week?
Last thing, I just thought this was kind of funny and silly, honestly. PlayStation 30th anniversary. They're putting out gray consoles. There's going to be a PS5 regular and a PS5 Pro. Um, 30th anniversary gray consoles, and I was just like, yippee, cool, thanks. Just in time
I'm
to,
always a fan of these.
I guess, I don't know, like I'm just of two minds about the PlayStation 5 Pro. On the one hand, I completely understand why it's $700 from a economic business person standpoint, and on the other hand, I'm also just like, I don't really, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So when I see this, I'm just like, I don't really want this right now. I'm mad at you, Sony. Um, I don't know why though. But anyway,
I remember they did the same thing with the 20th anniversary. They came out with the gray unit and gray controllers for the PS4. And yeah, I generally like the aesthetic of it. Still not a reason to play or to go out and buy uh
just didn't
the
change your
PlayStation 5
mind.
Pro. I mean, it's like what it does is it makes me want to get it so I can flip it, but that's just too much effort. I'm just lazy that way, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
When it comes to the neat thing is they're coming out with the extra peripherals, so it might be cool to have a PS5 controller that has the gray look
Great
and
aesthetic.
you know. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of what I might do. And granted, after this, also people are going to sell aftermarket panels. Uh,
Yeah.
but I just don't want I really just don't want that a version where I have to then buy an additional disk drive. Now, if it was a special edition that came with it, then but they're also gonna just they're nickel and diming you. Uh, but yeah, once again, this will sell really well. This will get a lot of people's attention. So it's the right marketing move. Uh, I may not agree with it, but also like the fun touches of having the original PS logo with the red and blue and green,
Yeah.
and having like the controller that same PlayStation button with the colors. It's a subtle touch, but it's nice. And
Have you ever
yeah.
seen the diagram of all of the iterations that all the ideas they had for the original PlayStation logo?
Oh no, I don't think I've seen that.
It's like 20 or so different um, renditions, and a lot of them are like, yeah, that's garbage. But there's like two or three others in there, at least in my opinion, where I was like, yeah, that looks actually pretty good. That looks pretty good. But when you compare even those to the one they ended up with, you're like, yeah, the one they ended up with was just right. It was just and it's probably just bias from growing up with it, but it is like, dang, that was pretty cool. Anyway, if you haven't seen that, you should go look at it because it's interesting just to see kind of the thought process that they went through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know the PS2 was always divisive because of how like edgy it was, literally. So no, I just realized they're doing a DualSense Edge version of the 30th anniversary controller as well. Uh, I don't think I'll need it, but like I do like my Xbox, like the Elite controller because of the back paddles.
Mm,
Just being able to use the top, I use my top paddles as a replacement for R3 L3,
okay.
and that's just so much more convenient and just it's a convenient, like a simple if you're playing like an open world game, if you have like a rate or like a Batman, like Batman Arkham, when you have a radar or something like that, you're constantly pinging, or constantly tapping to run. Having those just the upper ones, are really nice to have. So I kind of wanted that, but I also realized I don't play my PlayStation enough, and since I have the Xbox Elite controller, I don't need another Elite-ish controller um, for my PC. But I mean, if you're ever worried about the Joy-Con drift, as it were, the thumbstick drift, that was the one thing that was nice about the DualSense Edge is they have it's designed to replace those really easy, just pop in and pop out instead of having to like solder or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's once again, it's a neat little fun thing, but honestly, unless if you're a collector, don't bother buying it. And I'm just gonna hope that I don't have to buy it. And I'll just wait till the new system. So,
Yeah.
and then the big question is how many Switch 2s will it cost to equal one PS5 Pro or PS6?
I could guess at a price, but
Probably two. you know,
probably one and a half or two. Yeah, somewhere in
yeah.
between one and a half and two.
So one Switch 2 plus an extra set or two of Joy Cons. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, that's it for the news then. Thanks for providing that to us. And we have here you finally getting around to talking about the one game you've wanted to do a little more in-depth discussion about. So yeah, why don't you tell us about that?
So I went ahead and played Bayonetta 3, finished that up. When last I put this down, I think something else was coming out, and I was about 10 hours in. And I always planned to get back to it right away, and I never did. So there's a lot of stuff coming out, and I was like, you know what? There's a bunch of games that I really didn't put enough into, and I wanted to see the end of at least. This was one of them, especially since it's not supposed to be that long. I think it ended up taking me like 24 hours to beat, and How Long to Beat had it at um, 20, I think, which if I had maybe some of the extras I did cost me that much time, but anyway, it is what it is. Um, I'll go ahead and give a score kind of up front. I think it's probably, and I probably scored this back when I first talked about it a long time ago, but I think it's probably somewhere at 7.5 area. I probably gave it an 8 early on. and it might be somewhere in between 7.5 and 8, but playing it, picking it back up after all this time and then having some time to think about it some more, I think it's probably under an 8. Um, it has quite a few issues that are not like that don't break the game or kill the game. They're just sort of there. The story is kind of all over the place. It's always been a little bit all over the place with Bayonetta. Bayonetta 1 was the most straightforward, the simplest, and still it was sort of like, wait, we're doing this, and why is this? But it was more or less easier to follow. 2 got a little bit more far afield, but it was still fine. This one was even more that way. It had a solid enough through line, but I was also, but with these stories, with this one more than the other two, I was just like, yeah, I just don't really care. I don't really care about what you're saying. It's sort of whatever. There was a new girl character. She was okay, but borderline annoying. And by the end of the game, I was just sort of ready to be done. But the last 6-8 hours, I was like, yeah, it's not bad. There were definitely fun moments, and a lot of fun moments. But I was just like, yeah, I'm ready to be done with this. The combat is just kind of getting very repetitive. The extras, like the gallery and etc. That stuff could have been done better. It could have been laid out better, I think. There's a lot of vestigial parts of Bayonetta, like because it's on an old engine. The engine itself feels old. The menus feel old. Using health items is cumbersome. It should have been on a different button. And maybe it was, and I just never thought about it or found it or whatever. But it wasn't that bad, but you had to go into a different screen and use them. Power advancement could have been more interesting, I think. Accessing and retrying the missions to get a better score, a better trophy, was cumbersome, and it felt old. There should be like a rush mode or something where you can maybe after you beat it, there should be like a rush mode or something where you can just go, okay, I'm just going to go check box and just finish everything in the game rather than having to kind of slog through it again. And this is like, so spoilers here, I guess. This is like the end of the Bayonetta story. So, which they could always undo that, but basically at the end they say to be continued in another generation, and they basically say, hey, we're done with Bayonetta as a character here. We might do something else, but it's not going to be with like Bayonetta herself. So that sort of has me kind of worried about anything else that they might want to do with it. The good things about the game are that the core of the game, the combat, is still really, really good. It did get repetitive. It did get kind of boring. It has worn out it is at the end. It has worn out its welcome, but it was good. It was definitely competent and fun through pretty much all of it. And there, along with that, there are some Super Saiyan type of modes that you get that are really cool and fun. Though I think that those have probably also that's probably all that I need to see of that. The other thing is that I worry about this about Bayonetta because it's owned by Nintendo, and Nintendo will always be a gameplay first, which is good. but they won't ever be like a hardware or style or visuals as a like they're not going to be cutting edge in that. So I don't really want to see any more Bayonetta from them because I don't really because I think that Bayonetta or a Bayonetta type game would be better if a developer like the guys that did Black Myth Wukong or one of the other more stylish action games or like the guys that Shift Up, you know, like people who were able to and willing to use Unreal 5, uh, where it's just pretty, it's just a lot prettier. That would be really, really cool to see Bayonetta in basically like a Stellar Blade type of world. Um, that would be kind of my dream, and I don't really think that Nintendo is going to be able to do that. So unless the the IP shifts to another owner, then it's kind of probably stuck there. Um, so yeah, so overall, um, really good game. I'm ready to be done with it. Um, at least until a new iteration can come about, probably in the PS6 generation. That timeline, what is it, 2024? So probably like 2028, 2030 maybe would probably be a good time to revive it. But yeah, I definitely have had my fill of Bayonetta, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, well, luckily with Stellar Blade and Shift Up, I mean, they can prove that you can still make a kind of an action game like that and still make a profit. Because that's always the trouble with a lot of them is like, well, how do we make everything needs to be a service or somehow scheming for the long run. And yeah, Bayonetta was Bayonetta 3 was widely like beloved by a lot of people. Um, when I was looking up, I know like how long to beat. It shows that like because of all the collections and stuff like that, the times vary wildly. They said it's 13 hours to beat, but if you wanted to collect everything 100% it, you're looking at like 44 hours. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
that's pretty wild there.
if you go through on story mode, then yeah, you could probably beat it in 13 hours. But I was playing it on hard to start, and then I back it down to normal. I think just to because I do want to jump back in. I was in the middle of the game, and I needed to relearn a lot of stuff. But yeah, normal it'd be hard to beat it in 13, I would think. But maybe some people are just, I mean, I don't know. I'm not particularly good at games, but anyway. So yeah, I mean,
Some people like to mainline without doing any of the side fluff or collections or anything like that. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
but
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's one
like
of those things that
Stellar Blade being like a spiritual successor, some of these other games kind of being, no, that's the point of that one, but it does sort of feel like, hey, this is sort of what Bayonetta might be, more serious and in an Unreal. Um, so we still like it still exists, like this genre still exists. Um, it's just that with Bayonetta itself, probably done for that one for now.
Yep. All right. Well, I mean, I'm glad you finally got around to. It's always nice to clear off your back catalog and finally put one of these old unfinished games to rest. So, I mean, Lord knows I have plenty of those. Uh, well, a little while ago, you had mentioned playing a game on PlayStation, and it's always been on my list, but since yeah, I finally decided to give it a shot. The game is Inscryption. It's that card game uh, made by I can't remember the team who makes it, but the developer by Pony Island. Um, it's like a weird, simple game that has a dark twist. As you and difficulty as things progress. And uh, you know, you mentioned a little bit last time, but it's the concept is you just wake up in a cabin with literally a faceless figure in front of you, just a floating pair of eyes, and it's like uh, pretty much like, hey, it's time to play this card game. I mean, the game is weird enough to the point where it doesn't even let you do a new game. It makes you click to continue because you're just picking up where you left off in theory. And yeah, as you like, it's obviously like horror adjacent because it's like, you're in a creepy cabin, don't know what's going on, can only see this creature's hand in front of you, and the deck of cards you get are animals. And in order to have like a predator, like a wolf on your team, you have to sacrifice some of the basic animals.
Mm.
And so you're doing blood sacrifices, which essentially is like tapping your mana and like magic or something like that. But you're like, yeah, let me just sacrifice these cards and power up other ones, and it gives you a little map as you're playing through the quote unquote levels, and then it lets you choose certain things. It's very creepy and like uh, has a good ambiance to the whole thing. As it progresses, you unlock new, like, you can wander the cabin. You can never actually interact with the entity, at least in the beginning. Um, and it was kinda neat because at one point, I think it did a mandatory fail for me. At least I'm pretty sure it's mandatory, or I just really got like, stomped, hard. And upon my second playthrough, they there was like a clue or tip that came in, and I quickly, like, I thought about it for a little bit, and then I figured out what it was for. And then in the cabin, I'm sitting there. There's multiple puzzles and things to do, and it was kind of a great domino effect of, okay, I did this, which unlocked that, which then I'm like, okay, wait, how do I think? And then gave me a minute. I'm like, okay, then I figured out this, that, the other thing, and like solved like five little puzzles, like all back to back, which is a nice little break from the actual card game. And like each map has, like, as you're going through these maps, you have like a different boss who has different BS like abilities. Halfway through, you're like, okay, I'm doing really good, and all of a sudden they're like, ha, I'm just pretty much gonna cheat now. Deal with it. And they're fun little gimmicks. Uh, but also it really uh, it really rewards exploration. One of the you get different items to help you. You get some of the lower critters, like your for blood sacrifices, you get some of those, like, you can in bottles, so you can just like smash the bottle at any time in a card game to get more blood sacrifice to help summon a higher enemy. You can have, they don't say anything, they're just like, here's a pair of pliers, this will help, like, as instead of health points, you have to deal so much damage to your opponent, and by dealing extra damage to the opponent, you have a scale, and something's dropping in the scale to obviously make it weigh. And so if their scale hits bottom, you win. So sometimes you can be going volleying back and forth and keep continuously balancing the scales. Uh, then they're like, one of the items you get is a pair of pliers, and like, this will help balance the scales. And you're like, okay. And so one time I'm like, you know what? I don't need it, but let me just see what this does. And he takes the pair of pliers to your character's teeth. You go ahead and rip out one of your teeth, and that's how you help balance the scales. And I'm like, wow, that was not expecting how gruesome that is. Um, yeah, then it was just it kind of gets darker and darker from there. You get a knife later on, and I actually accidentally clicked on the knife, and it completely did something else. I was like, "Holy smokes, did not expect that." Uh, and then it gave me an option afterwards, and I picked one of a few options. I got a trophy for what I picked, and it unlocked some other puzzle stuff. I was just like, "Dang, there is a lot to explore and a lot to do." Uh, and the creator's very good about, at least, and Pony Island was similar. It's like taking something like unseeming, and then also just like having layers upon layers underneath it. Um, I want to finish this game. It's just gonna take a while. It's just no,
Is
it's
it like a
one of those.
20-hour game? Is that
I honestly don't know. I feel like it feels like it shouldn't be that long, but also it feels like it could deceptively be like, yeah, I'm almost done, and it's like, psych, that's only the intro, right?
I don't
So I
think
actually didn't look
it's
up.
from what I remember hearing about this a long time ago. I don't think it's all that long. I think it's like around 20 or so, but I don't think it's like 30. I think it's like around 20. So hopefully, you can. I mean, that's not too much. You could probably get through that and finish it.
Yeah, so this does the yeah, it says 12 and a half hours to beat, but to 100% you're looking at 27.
Okay.
Um, so it's a you're over doubling the time, essentially, to go ahead and get that 100%ed. And I can see the fun in something like that because there are seemingly a lot of different avenues you can maybe go down, or as things progress. A lot of a lot of weird game gimmicks and twists probably.
Mhm.
I just remember getting really really far in Pony Island, and then at one point just the difficulty curve spiked so hard, or maybe I was just doing it wrong, and I'm just like I was kind of banging my head against it. And I'm like, all right, I'm done for now, and I just never got back to it. And that's like that's kind
Mm.
of that's one of my gaming like shames. Like I want to go back and finish that, but I just it would be I have to start from scratch all over again. And that one in particular has a kind of slower start because I think that was like like one of the first games they did. And but yeah, it's just a lot of fun. So if you like a card game or something with a creepy, eerie twist, then yeah, I'd say give this one a shot. It's not too expensive. It's on Steam as well, and it's pretty awesome.
I've always heard good
For what it
things.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you played it a little bit, but you didn't get you weren't gonna you didn't seem like you had the time, and I'm like
I don't
I
think I
thought it'd
ever
be more up
played
your
it.
alley.
I
You must.
really had it on my list. I've had it on my list several times, and every time I've just been like, no, not right now, not right now. And I think it's
Yeah.
because I
Maybe
listened
it's
to a
maybe it was
podcast.
because you mentioned it on because of the game PlayStation, your subscription membership to PlayStation. If you're on the second tier of PlayStation Plus, which is is it just Plus? Um,
Yeah,
it's not premium. Okay, so yeah, if you're on the Plus membership, then the middle tier, that's you brought it to my attention, and uh, since I have your
extra.
your account on my system,
So like
I was
plays
able to play it that way.
yeah, PlayStation Plus basic, and then extra is the one that I'm on, and then
Oh,
premium
extra, that's it. Okay.
is the third highest tier. Yeah, it's I think years ago I heard about the ending, and I don't even really remember everything about that. And not that it was good or bad or anything like that. I just remember kind of hearing about it, and so that sort of let the air out of it for me. Um, but it it's still one that I would ostensibly like to get back to at some point.
Yeah, it's like I said, I like it a lot, and if you like card games and the figuring out the things, like I find it to be equal parts like card game and slash like puzzler because it's
Yeah.
almost you kind of have to work with what you're given, and it's almost like a chess game or something like that. And that point, you're like, well, if I got to plan ahead, and can I get away with this? And I find that enjoyable. But like I said, just the creepiness and all the other back stuff. Um, yeah, so slight spoiler. I used the knife, okay? I didn't want I wasn't sure if I should say this, but I used the knife, and I accidentally it was just an item on my table. I clicked it, and you rip out your own eye.
Oh.
And I was just like, "Holy," like, I couldn't believe it, to the point where, like, half my screen is dark and I can't see my cards. And then when I beat the level, or I beat and then I'm given a replacement eye. Um
Okay.
and that so you have a box to pick from. I picked this one with like lines and stuff on it. I'm like, okay, this looks cool. And some sort of like uh alchemist, like circle kind of concept. So it's some sort of like pentagram-ish thing for the eye. And it completely changed the way I look. Like it did some augmentation to my display, and I was able to discover something from that. And I got a trophy for picking that eye. Apparently, I'm like, I don't know what happens when you pick the other ones, and now I'm curious. But I was just like, I completely just didn't expect it. I'm like, oh man, that's wild. So, uh, and that's only like the first. That's only like my second or third run. I think it was my third run through the game when I discovered that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they just have some really interesting tricks, and things specific things you have to do, which kind of makes it a pain in the. And I can see why this would take so long, 100%ing, because it may not be necessary to complete the game, but some of the puzzles and stuff are like, all right, I'm pretty sure I know what I have to do here. But in order for me to do that, I have to have the right cards in my hand and be able to play them at the right time. Uh, and that's all RNG, right? It's a matter of happenstance. Like, hey, I can finally do the thing because I have the right cards in hand. And like that's what happened is like I knew one card. I'm like, I bet something will happen if I do this. Uh, but I didn't do it right away, and then I died, and then I had to wait to get that card back in my hand again, which took a while. Um, And so I was just like, all right, and then I did it, and sure enough, it unlocked something else, and it kind of did a new thing. I'm like, sweet, it rewards a lot of that stuff, and there's a lot of stuff you might accidentally stumble across. Um, so this is Daniel Mullins. Uh, so they, like I said, did Pony Island, this, and also one called the Hex, which I've never played. So that was their in between game, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
And yeah, so give it a shot. Look at them. The games are relatively inexpensive right now, currently on Steam.
Yeah, they're always going
Like
on
going on
sale
60%
too.
off. Yeah.
We're coming into the holiday season. Inscryption will be dirt cheap here sometime between now and Christmas.
All right. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much what I've been playing. So yeah. What about yourself, man? What have you been watching?
So I had a thing on here for bad horror movies. I've watched 3 that I had some stuff to say about, but we're getting kind of long here, and you have
You're
a
gonna
couple
save
things.
that for Shocktober?
So I might
Getting
say
primed?
that for Shocktober. Actually, next week would be just before October, so it might be good to put that out there. Then, but it's just not all that important. But what I will talk about is a series of audiobooks that I just finished. This is the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie, and it's a high fantasy series, not super high fantasy, um, but like middle to high fantasy series. So like it's set in medieval times in a fake type of Britain, I guess. The first book, so it's a series of 3 books that comprise the main series. He's written other standalone books that are in the world but not part of the like flagship ship series, I guess. But the first book is called The Blade Itself. The second book is called Before They Are Hanged. The third book is called The Last Argument of Kings. And they are really good. I mean, if you're much of a fantasy book connoisseur, then you've probably heard of these and or already read them. They came out in the early 2000s. Kind of the last one there, the third one came out in '08. So I think that the first one came out in like '05 or something like that. And yeah, they're really good. It's a little bit more of a darker version of sort of the tried and true, you know, Lord of the Rings type of story. Um, you know, it's it's it is sort of that story. It's not like there's like a ring and there's like and there's like 11 guys or whatever like going on a quest, but there is like an aspect of a getting the band together to go on a quest, what they do and all that stuff. But it's a lot, but like the way that it's written is a lot more, I would say kind of realistic, and not so, it's a little bit more like anti-hero type of stuff that's going on. And it's just really smartly written, in a lot of ways. And it's a book series that you should read if you are interested in that kind of thing. Um, the last thing that I'll say is a little bit spoilery. I'm not going to give specific spoilers, but just my opinion of the end. I think it makes a bit of a hard turn at the end, that I could criticize pretty heftily, I think, that I could mock in some ways. It gets a little bit grimdark and a little bit cynical at the end, sort of in the way that Game of Thrones is at times. and that sort of irritated me. I kind of felt like a little bit of a rug pull, a little bit of oh, I'm going to subvert your expectations, um, which I didn't wholly appreciate. Um, but overall, it was definitely a journey worth taking. Um, Even with that, and I think that most people probably would be more okay with the ending than I am, because it is very highly rated overall. But I did want to mention that last little bit there. Not that it was a bad ending; it's just not necessarily the ending that I wanted. Um,
All
or
right. Yeah, I think I don't know if you mentioned this to me before, but it sounded it as you describing it. I'm pretty sure a different friend recommended this to me as well because I'm noted for disliking high fantasy. Like I used to really like it, and at some point I just kind of fell off really hard. Uh, and so a friend was recommending this to me, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't you, but that the I just remember the concept of the actual phrase "getting the band back together," like that was like what they used, and I was just like, okay, yeah, I kind of don't want to watch it. I don't. I kind of don't want to do this. I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, I might if it weren't for the fact that the other things they've recommended to me, like the Wheel of Time, I absolutely did not like. Um, so that's why I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can actually go through this. But since this is now coming up for the second time in like a couple months, I'm like, okay, maybe I should give it a shot. And
it,
it's
you're not. I don't think you're gonna hate it. Um, if you did, I would be thoroughly surprised. I think, um, because the writing itself, the moment to moment writing is good. The rationality or the rationale of what characters do and why is well established. So you're not going like, well, that was like, well, that's not something that character would do. Because sometimes they do dumb things, but it's like, yeah, but that person's dumb. Then they're set up that way. Um, Whereas other characters are set up as smart, and so they do things that are smart. So smart characters don't do dumb things, like stuff like that.
yeah. When you write someone out of character, all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's really jarring. Yeah.
So I would say that like it's sort of like every fantasy book that you've ever read, except with more realistic people and the more realistic outcomes of the things that happen in fantasy books. There are definitely um, there's fewer jokes in the first book, and there's a lot more books jokes in the third book, where fantasy itself is the butt of the joke. But there's a lot in the third book where they say some stuff and you're like, yeah, because that's what usually happens in high fantasy books is this, and this, and he was just openly mocking it and kind of saying like, yeah, that's stupid, that wouldn't actually happen, and so that part of it, I do respect. It's like he does kind of go, yeah, but like let's pull that fantasy into reality. If this world was real, what would it really be like? Um, I think he does a pretty good job of that. So it comes with my recommendation, and it's pretty widely lauded on Goodreads and stuff like that. So, and also, I mean, the the audiobooks are all acted by, I can't think of the guy's name, but he's a fantastic uh, uh, voice actor. Just really, really excellent. He has some crazy good voices for all the characters. And I was actually thinking about it as I was finishing the third book, and I was thinking like, as he was, voicing it, I was like, I have not thought about this all being done by the same person, um, since the beginning of the first book. Just and even listening to him, I was like thinking this is being done by the same person as he was switching back and forth in a conversation, and I was like, it just sounds so believable, even though it's the same guy. So Really excellent job there.
I found it. Is it Stephen Pacey?
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Okay.
So yeah, highly recommended.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, that's always good to have a decent like to be happy with something, especially when you're going through a trilogy or something like that, and for it to end. You know, like I said, it may not be the ending that you want, but as a whole, you walk away from it being like, yeah, I liked it. That's always a good thing. Uh, now, uh, I also finished a few things of anime, and it's one is just it was a silly, stupid show called I Parry Everything, and it's like I mentioned it before when it first came out, and I talked a little bit about it. So now I'm just going to give you a little bit of my thoughts on kind of how it concluded. Not going to really spoil anything. Just this one was just about like a fantasy setting, and it's not an isekai, so that's always a plus in my opinion. Uh,
Me
but
too.
like
Me too.
yeah, country bumpkin kid, ends up his folks kick it, so he grew up with stories about being an adventurer and the heroics. So he goes to the city to become an adventurer, and turns out he doesn't have a knack for it. He goes there's the specialty, all the D&D classes, kind of, you got your thief, your mage, your fighter, archer, like there's schools for those, and he goes and does an internship at each one, learns the basic of all of them, but like doesn't actually have a knack for him, as it were. Like he doesn't have a special talent gift that awakens. So he's kind of rejected from all the schools. And since he doesn't get a specialty skill, like a higher end, the Adventurers Guild are like, no, we can't let you do anything because you're just going to be a danger to yourself. So he then does the studious thing of going back to the countryside, continuing his life, but practicing daily. Hopefully, like in hopes to get his super awakened power. Um, then it flash forwards to him just being like going back to the city, and they let him at the lowest level of guild entry for the Adventurers Guild. They're like, you can't actually go on quests or in dungeons, but you can clean ditches and help around the town doing all those fetch quest type of stuff. So he becomes the like the handyman for the area, and but because he's only learned his only like combat skill was to parry, and his only like defensive magic is more or less the magic to strengthen his own body, and that's all he's ever practiced, and he knows how to like do self heal, like a low heal, and by constantly refining those, they're technically like max op, but they're technically the lowest level, just based off of continuous training.
Hmm.
And since he's such a country bumpkin, he ends up getting into different like he ends up trying to help somebody, and they end up getting attacked by a minotaur. But he doesn't see it. He doesn't know it's a minotaur. He just like, oh, it's a cow. Like, man, this cow is pretty strong. Like it's like I was like, luckily, like I can't imagine what a real monster would be like. That kind of stuff. And so he's just completely dim. But he's a genuinely good guy, and goes through like each episode's named like I parry something, or other, and it gets more and more ridiculous as the series goes on. Um, and it's like it's kind of the right kind of stupid. It's just like
Hmm.
it's not meant to be taken seriously at all. It's just kind of chill to have in the background. It's funny, and like it's not like super laugh out loud funny, but it makes you chuckle, and you just kind of want to see how much more ridiculous this thing gets. Like, how can you escalate it? What's the next step here? Um, all said and done, it's okay. I mean, it's like once again, it's I would say it's like a comfortable 6. It's like a junk food thing.
Hmm.
It's just like, yeah, if you just want something different, you want to see something silly. I'm not going to go around telling people you got to go watch this. You're going to be better off for it or nothing like that. But by all means, it's like, hey, if you just want something just to have, like, this is totally one of those things. So yeah, it was. It ended. I'm like, all right, it kind of went where I expected it, but at the same time, it's just like you kind of wish there was more to it, a little more something, a little substance. But at the same time, it's like, what was I expecting? I really wasn't expecting much more. So, all right. And then the other anime that finished up that I'll talk about is Alya sometimes hides her feelings in Russian. And I've really liked this one. I recommended it early on. It's being dubbed as well. Uh, Now the whole series is pretty solid. It's a rom com, and I like it. The ending to see this season, it just kind of ends. It's like I'm not going to spoil
Mm,
anything. It's just the fact that it most definitely needs another season. Is how I'm going to say it. It doesn't. It's not really a cliffhanger. They're just kind of like, all right, we're concluding this little bit, and they're prepping for student council elections essentially, like, but
mm,
they're prepping like a year out. It's kind of nuts. It's like, they've only the whole season takes place in just a few months of school time. Like they started their new term, and then all the candidates, like, before the summer essentially are like, hey, we're announcing that we're going to be running like 7-8 months from now, so yeah, get to know us kind of deal. And it's just like, all right, that's kind of weird. And
mm,
um but overall the story's good. It makes you they have a lot of funny moments. They have certain things that they're building on. They kind of lay the groundwork for, like, hey, there's more to these characters, some of these characters, than meets the eye. You got, you know, so yeah, like I said, this is one of the things that it needs a second season. I don't think it's been confirmed for a second season, but I really hope it gets one because I will really enjoy it.
so it's
I
kind of
do
like a
recommend.
technically we ended it if we get canceled, but really we aren't planning to get canceled, and we are fully ready to make something more.
Yeah,
That's
I
kind of
mean, it
where it
doesn't
was
leave
left
you off
off.
on a cliffhanger. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's no cliffhanger ending, but there is most definitely not. This isn't an appropriate ending. It's like
Okay.
halfway through a school season,
Yeah.
kind of deal.
But
You
yeah,
need more.
yeah, this is one of the higher rated anime of the season. I've when I poke around at like ratings indexes or whatever, and people really like it a lot. And what you told me about it last time did make me think a lot more of it. That it was a lot more unique and maybe poignant and might hit you right in the feels in some ways. So yeah, I've always or ever since I heard of this, it sounded pretty good to me.
Yeah, the main character's sister, she her the um Seiryu, the voice actress who does her voice, is pretty amazing. I
Mm,
really like her. Like, apparently she's a kind of newer to the scene, but just the inflections you get and the way that character's written, just all really works pretty awesome. And yeah, I recommend. I totally like. I would say this is. I don't know. I probably, I'd say for me, it's like an 8. Like I will actively recommend this to people. That's kind of how I feel like an 8 is. Like I think that it's, for sure, this last season, it's been a solid watch, and you should. It makes me want to jump into the manga. Hopefully, the manga is further out, just so I can get more story.
mm,
So that's kind of how I see it. I mean, now, you know, other people might not think it that highly, but like I said, in the genre of, like rom coms and stuff like that, yeah, I totally think this is worth a shot. So, yeah, even though the season's done, you might want to give it a shot, man. I mean,
yeah, yeah. That there's a couple other anime that are standing in its way. But if I get to it, if I get through those, then this is probably one that I will have to come back to if I manage to, because um, there's just some other stuff that's in the way.
stop the bad horror movies, and there you go. No,
Yeah, but like when it's like, yeah, those, yeah, those are wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and can't go back to sleep. So you don't want to watch anything good. You just want to watch something that's going to make you want to turn it off. Um, but anyway,
well,
more on that
speaking
later.
about well, speaking about waking up at 3 a.m. and not wanting to listen to anything good, if you made it this far, we appreciate you sticking around. And yes, once again, this has been another Dead Pixel, episode 93. And Nick, what are some words of wisdom you got for the people out there?
Buy lots of boxes of Kleenex. They're very handy, or tissue, whatever.
We're gonna leave it at that. Okay. Until next time, y'all just take it easy.
Bye.